The land of origin is occupied by the cultivator camp, and it contains many mysterious lands, including the one that nurtured the sky-splitting Saber. There are many similar mysterious lands that can be explored gradually in the future. Luo Feng received complete information about the Lord's Daos and their inheritances. But these Daos cannot simply be learned because each Lord's Dao contains their own spiritual will. At most, others can borrow some of their insights. Lord Wulin cultivates the primordial material Dao, which consists of 9 parts matter and 1 part infinity combined together. Since pure matter has relatively weak defensive power, it must be combined with certain infinite mysteries to transform material energy. According to Wulin's judgment, fusing more infinite mysteries would make his techniques more flexible and less clumsy. Ming Huang cultivates the primordial thunder Dao, consisting of 8 parts thunder and 2 parts water Dao. Among the 8 lords, only Lord Mo Man follows the purest path, the primordial fluctuation Dao. His body is essentially a single fluctuation, making him the smallest in physique and giving him the lowest energy reserves among the 8 lords. Luo Feng learned that Lord Mo Man was the first to become a master of the source world through the faith path. His voice can make countless creatures submit, and he pioneered the pure primordial fluctuation Dao. This path is especially damaging to the ancestors because its power can penetrate deep into their bodies without them realizing it, causing their injuries to accumulate the longer they fight him. Lord Nai Ji Yu and Senior Yuan have somewhat similar paths because both continuously accumulate and strengthen themselves. Lord Nai Ji Yu follows the primordial bloodline Dao, which requires him to absorb ancestor-level bloodlines. Every ancestor-level bloodline is extremely special and very difficult to fully master. But each bloodline he completely masters makes him stronger, theoretically allowing his strength to continue increasing endlessly. Senior Yuan follows the primordial rule operation Dao. He has comprehended more Daos than anyone else in the cultivator camp. He initially penetrated the perfect operation of 9 great Daos, thereby comprehending the rule operation system and becoming a lord. Although each additional Dao he comprehends is only at the complete great Dao level of the God King Ultimate Realm stage, Yuan has already comprehended 25 great Daos. The perfect operation of 9 great Daos formed the primordial rule operation Dao, which allowed Yuan to become a lord. As he comprehends more Daos, they continue to integrate into the primordial rule operation system, further increasing his strength. Excluding Starlight Lord, Yuan's current strength is clearly above that of the other lords. Nai Ji Yu and Yuan both follow unusual paths that allow them to continuously accumulate and grow stronger. Nai Ji Yu, Jin, Wulin, Ming Huang, and Mo Man remain at roughly the same level, while Yuan is already half a step stronger than them. Starlight Lord is 1 step stronger than Nai Ji Yu and the others. The so-called additional step means comprehending a second primordial level Dao. A primordial level Dao represents the essence of a certain highest power. And if one's ability is sufficient, there is a possibility of comprehending a second one, naturally making the individual much stronger than the other lords. Every lord follows a path that deeply resonates with their innermost desire, and only then can they become a lord. Changing to another path would mean that it no longer represents the ultimate desire of their heart. Although the lords possess extremely fast mental operations, powerful comprehension abilities, and exceptional observation skills, the possibility of comprehending a second primordial level Dao is nearly zero. Starlight Lord was an exception. Before escaping the braided cage, while still a half-primordial life with a relatively low life level, he stubbornly comprehended the primordial space-time path. At that time, he possessed a sufficient understanding of the void, but his comprehension of time within primordial space was extremely weak. Therefore, using the power-breaking technique, he comprehended a primordial space-time path based primarily on space. With 9 parts space and 1 part time, his direct combat strength was already extremely powerful. After becoming a lord, Starlight Lord comprehended another primordial space-time path, this time primarily based on time, with 7 parts time and 3 parts space. The combination of these 2 paths made him the most terrifying existence in the aspects of time and space throughout infinite primordial space. His combat ability greatly surpassed that of the other lords. His most terrifying abilities were being always present everywhere, existing in every time, and possessing an unassailable power. Other lords were powerful, but their primary combat avatars could still be destroyed. and Lord Wulin's body could be restrained and trapped. Starlight Lord, however, could not be killed, even when facing terrifying attacks. His body could descend at any moment from the past or the future, allowing him to appear anywhere around the battlefield. Because of this, there was no hope of killing him in battle. His existence had kept the cultivator territory stable. The innate primordial life camp had attacked relentlessly but had only managed to breach more than 600 world groups. The reason the invasion was so difficult, and why numerous world-level primordials and high-level primordials had perished, was the omnipresent Starlight Lord. Luo Feng understood why Senior Yuan believed Starlight Lord had contributed the most. Although Luo Feng also felt that Yuan was being humble because he had played a role in the development of every lord. The birth of the first lord allowed resources to be nurtured for the lords who came afterward. Without Senior Yuan, Starlight Lord would not have been able to exchange for world-level primordial servant before escaping the braided cage. Without Senior Yuan and Starlight Lord, Luo Feng would not have obtained the Star Tower or numerous primordial bloodlines for comprehension. And becoming a lord would have been much more difficult. The path followed by Starlight Lord also coincided with Luo Feng's own thoughts. Before breaking free from the braided cage, Luo Feng had realized that his life and death Dao had been led astray by the Star Tower blood scale, becoming 7 parts life and 3 parts destruction. At that time, he had no choice but to follow that path. Although it was still a path he liked, Luo Feng believed that a life form should be centered on life. But if one wanted to annihilate enemies, destruction had to be the focus. Therefore, he had already considered creating a new primordial life and death Dao centered primarily on destruction. However, his life level had been too low at that time, so he had not dared to attempt a second path. Now that he had become a lord, he could try. The Dao he created in the future could also be given a different name, such as the primordial blade path. Using the sky-splitting saber as an example, the name was merely a title. Luo Feng understood that creating a new Dao could take an indefinable amount of time, so he planned to slowly ponder it after the war ended. He also understood how difficult it was to pioneer a second primordial Dao, since all the other lords had failed, while even Starlight Lord had needed a long time to create his second Dao. Luo Feng then carefully studied the upcoming opponents and learned that the Ancestors possessed extremely powerful strength, although they had grown through their life course to reach their current level. This did not mean they were weak. There were stronger and weaker Ancestors, and some were superior to lords in certain aspects. Even before comprehending his second spacetime Dao, Starlight Lord had been surpassed by several individuals in the spacetime aspect throughout infinite primordial space. Only recently had he risen to the highest position in that aspect. Luo Feng felt somewhat worried about the combined power of more than 70 Ancestors, whose united force could destroy everything, and wondered whether he could withstand it. After understanding the abilities of his companions and learning about the techniques of his opponents, Luo Feng began attempting to create a complete system of combat techniques based on his own Dao. Luo Feng spends a long period creating new secret techniques after becoming a lord. Because his previous life-based system has a wide range but becomes less threatening against Ancestor-level opponents, he decides to create a specialized domain secret technique for dealing with the more than 100 Ancestors of the innate primordial life camp. Since each Ancestor possesses a unique supreme level power and their combined force is extremely formidable, Luo Feng must discard many ordinary techniques and carefully develop a method suited to fighting them as a group. Although he can comprehend countless ordinary secret techniques in a single day, he spends tens of thousands of days perfecting his life and death domain secret technique. He then begins developing combat secret techniques that can fully exploit his own advantages. His body contains an enormous amount of energy, and his recovery ability is exceptionally powerful, allowing him to restore 1,800,000,000 origin powers and placing him among the top 3 beings in the infinite primordial space in terms of recovery. Therefore, his combat techniques are designed around the ability to continuously unleash powerful attacks without being restricted by energy consumption. Meanwhile, the 7 lords wait in a dark lake space in the land of origin. Knowing that Luo Feng's breakthrough means their counterattack is about to begin, they discuss how quickly he can create his new techniques. Yuan points out that Luo Feng needed only 25 billion epic times to break laws with force, proving that his comprehension is extraordinary. Although facing 73 ancestors immediately after becoming a lord will still create considerable pressure. The lords also compare Luo Feng's abilities with their own. In movement techniques, Luo Feng is weaker than Starlight, Ming Huang, Jin, and Mo Man, and is only slightly more agile than Wu Lan, whose enormous body makes him one of the least mobile lords. In defense, Luo Feng is also inferior to Wu Lan, who specializes in ultimate defense. However, his primordial life and death Dao is exceptionally powerful in direct combat. Starlight explains that Luo Feng's greatest advantage is his nearly endless energy. His recovery speed is faster than the rate at which he consumes energy, meaning that no matter how fiercely he fights or how many techniques he uses, he can continuously maintain his peak state. With the power-breaking technique and the possibility of comprehending another primordial life and death Dao in the future, Luo Feng will be able to use his enormous energy reserves with even greater efficiency. Starlight therefore believes that Luo Feng will eventually become the strongest frontal combatant in the cultivator camp. Although Starlight may be slightly stronger in direct combat at present, his true importance lies in his ability to observe countless possible futures and use his space-time net to reach any location within its range. By seeing dangers in advance and identifying the weaknesses of enemies, he can help the cultivator camp avoid disastrous situations, even when facing the siege of more than 70 ancestors. Nevertheless, Starlight believes that Luo Feng is more important than himself because strength is the foundation of survival. Even the ability to observe countless futures cannot save the cultivator camp if it lacks sufficient power to resist its enemies. Among the two beings who have broken laws with force, Luo Feng is more suited to combat. When Luo Feng finally arrives at the Dark Lake space, Yuan asks whether he has finished creating his techniques. Luo Feng replies that he has carefully studied the methods of the ancestors and created several combat secret techniques, but he is not yet familiar with coordinating them alongside the other lords. Yuan tells him not to worry, since he will create a coordination plan that integrates everyone's techniques through his formation, greatly increasing the overall strength of the group. Luo Feng then reveals his newly created realm of life and death. This domain can strengthen the vitality of his allies, deprive enemies of vitality energy, and weaken or obliterate part of their power. However, Luo Feng admits that its effect may be relatively limited when facing a huge group of ancestors. The domain possesses another far more astonishing ability. Apart from Wu Lan, Luo Feng can instantly restore the other lords even after they suffer severe injuries. The lords are shocked because this ability is not ordinary vitality restoration. Luo Feng explains that he transforms his own origin power and directly uses it to replenish the origin power of his allies. Wu Lan's energy is too vast for Luo Feng to easily restore him after severe injuries. But the other lords possess much smaller energy reserves. Even Nai Jiyu, whose energy is only a fraction of Wu Lan's and far less than Luo Feng's, can be restored extremely easily. Although Luo Feng's recovery ability has decreased slightly after becoming a lord because his total energy has become vastly greater, he can still recover 1/10 of his enormous origin power reserve within a single breath. As a result, he can completely restore several lords such as Nai Jiyu in an extremely short period of time. Luo Feng also confirms that replenishing the other lords does not significantly affect him because his own recovery speed is extraordinarily fast. The lords immediately recognize the tremendous value of this ability. Mo Man, whose physical body is the weakest among the lords, realizes that he can now unleash his strongest techniques without conserving energy. As long as his main combat avatar is not completely destroyed, Luo Feng can restore him to peak condition, allowing him to continue using powerful killing techniques. Jin is equally excited and says that he can now fight much more recklessly. He even declares Luo Feng to be his best brother because having someone capable of restoring him to his peak is so valuable. Mo Man then proposes an even more powerful cooperation strategy. He can leave a weak avatar beside Luo Feng while sending his main combat avatar to fight without restraint. After the main avatar expends its energy, Luo Feng can restore the weak avatar, allowing Mo Man to continue using his strongest attacks repeatedly. With such a combination, Mo Man believes that very few beings in the infinite primordial space could stop them. The other lords also begin viewing Luo Feng differently as they realize how many new battle strategies his recovery ability makes possible. In the end, Yuan concludes that the realm of life and death alone can increase the overall strength of the 7 lords by at least 20%. The ability has little effect on Starlight, Yuan, and Wu Lan, who can generally maintain their peak condition on their own, but it greatly benefits Niji Yu and significantly strengthens the other lords who previously had to carefully conserve their energy. Luo Feng was asked by Yuan what he was skilled in besides domains. Luo Feng explained that his main strengths were the physical body combat system and the blade technique system. And he demonstrated them one by one. Among the lords of the cultivator camp, their daos, inheritances, and combat techniques were openly shared because they were trusted companions, allowing them to cooperate more effectively. However, every lord's dao was unique. Even if 2 lords eventually created the same primordial path, their internal mysteries and integrated spiritual wills would still be completely different. Each lord therefore had to create the path most suitable for themselves. Because even the slightest disharmony in spirit could cause the creation of a primordial level path to fail. Jin was amazed that although life path techniques were generally vicious and difficult to master, Luo Feng's techniques were exceptionally fierce. Luo Feng explained that he did not like purely life-based techniques because they lacked sufficient killing power. Methods such as depriving vitality, infiltration, and erosion could instantly extinguish the vitality of world-level primordials with a single glance. But they were much less effective against ancestors. Therefore, truly powerful killing moves required the fusion of life and destruction. Yuan explained that the 73 ancestors and the lords had mainly been fighting through long-range techniques because neither side dared to become trapped within the other side's formation. Even Lord Wulan could be heavily restrained or temporarily imprisoned if surrounded by the enemy. Yuan therefore instructed Luo Feng to focus on long-range methods and transmitted his cooperation plan to all 7 other lords. The information stream contained detailed battle simulations showing numerous scenarios in which 8 lords cooperated against the 73 ancestors. Luo Feng immediately understood the plan and could infer many other combat situations after observing it once. Yuan stated that Luo Feng's contribution to collective combat would be enormous, increasing the overall strength of the lords by 30 to 40%. Since the ancestors were unaware of Luo Feng's breakthrough, the lords had to seize this opportunity to kill several ancestors. The lords were already filled with killing intent. As the highest-level protectors of the cultivator camp, they carried the responsibility of defending the entire camp. More than 1/6 of their territory had already fallen, and countless creatures had been destroyed. Yuan ordered Starlight Lord to take Luo Feng and depart cautiously. Once Luo Feng entered the battlefield and the ancestors discovered his presence, they would urgently send reinforcements, which were estimated to require 3 days to arrive. Because the infinite primordial space was too vast, even the innate primordial life camp's ancestors who excelled in space-time would need 3 days to reach the battlefield. Those 3 days would therefore give the lords an opportunity to expand their gains. Starlight Lord quietly took Luo Feng away from the land of origin. Luo Feng was regarded as the strongest expert in concealing his life aura throughout the entire infinite primordial space. He could completely control every strand of his life aura, making it extremely difficult for even causal methods to detect him. Luo Feng realized that with his current life level, every step could cross an endlessly vast distance, making him much faster than lake transmission. Yet his speed was still insignificant compared with Starlight Lord's. Every step Starlight Lord took crossed countless layers of spacetime, which appeared beneath their feet like a map. Luo Feng was astonished that Starlight Lord could travel by transcending spacetime itself. Starlight Lord explained that every lord had their own strengths and that he was simply skilled at traveling. This ability was also why he had been able to collect numerous high-level primordial bloodlines and world-level primordial bloodlines. Starlight Lord explained that every lord was undying and indestructible, existing as a transcendent being. However, because they protected the cultivator camp, they endured tremendous hardships. Lords were the most powerful individual existences in the infinite primordial space, and if they were selfish and ignored the survival of countless cultivators, their lives would be far easier. However, they had been nurtured by their source worlds and had received immense grace and causality during their cultivation. Therefore, no matter how powerful they became, They could never forget their roots and origins. Starlight Lord pointed out that the lords were already struggling to protect the 3,600 world clusters, of which more than 600 had been lost. Luo Feng possessed talent and potential no weaker than Starlight Lord's, but his path was different because it specialized in combat. To protect a sufficiently vast cultivator territory, strength and combat power were the most important factors. Starlight Lord also reminded Luo Feng that source worlds existed throughout the infinite primordial space, far beyond the 3,600 world clusters. Luo Feng promised to do his utmost. The 3,600 world clusters represented the region with the highest density of source worlds and were therefore suitable for constructing a spacetime network. The Seven Lords had previously worked hard to defend this territory, while many other remote world clusters were even more difficult to protect. Starlight Lord told Luo Feng not to think too far ahead, as their most urgent task was to completely reclaim the 3,600 world clusters. After traveling for nearly a day, Starlight Lord and Luo Feng approached the battlefield. The battlefield was an endless and vast void, and the battle had affected an enormous area. Even a source world at the edge of the battlefield had been blasted apart, something the lords had been unable to prevent because they were at a disadvantage. Within the violently boiling spacetime, the 73 terrifying ancestors unleashed their highest level powers. Their attacks interwove and completely enveloped the Seven Lords, whose main battle avatars struggled to withstand the pressure. Fortunately, Yuan's formation had fundamentally transformed the Lords' cooperation and increased their overall strength several times. Without the formation, the Lords would have been unable to withstand the Ancestors' combined assault. Luo Feng's arrival increased the overall strength of the Lords by 30 to 40%, which was extremely significant. Although Yuan's role in collective combat remained even more important, the Ancestors were enraged that Starlight Lord could fight them while simultaneously dividing his power to attack various other teams. At that moment, spacetime twisted, and Starlight Lord appeared inside the Lord's formation together with a black-robed, black-haired man. His avatar naturally merged with his main battle avatar. The 73 ancestors immediately noticed Luo Feng and were shocked as they sensed something ominous. Upon arriving, Luo Feng immediately unfolded his realm of life and destruction, although his domain was quickly torn apart and destroyed when it penetrated into the ancestors' region. Within his own area, his origin power rapidly transformed and replenished the power of his allies. Mo Man, Jin, Ming Huang, and Nai Jiyu, who had previously been injured, instantly recovered to peak condition. Guided by Yuan's formation, Luo Feng joined the Lord's team and returned to his enormous size. Together with Lord Wulin, he resisted the attacks of the Ancestors. The 73 Ancestors' combined attacks consisted of interwoven highest-level powers that continued to descend upon them. Even after being initially resisted and weakened by Yuan's formation, the attacks still struck Lord Wulin and Luo Feng's massive bodies with terrifying force. An invisible energy shield appeared over Luo Feng's body and resisted layer after layer of attacks. The shield was supplied by the power of 1,080 million origins. Although its energy was continuously depleted, it was also constantly replenished. Some attacks, however, were powerful enough to ignore the energy shield and penetrate through his robe into his body. Luo Feng's entire physique possessed toughness equivalent to 1/10 of the Star Tower blood scale. Although some parts of his body were damaged, they rapidly recovered. Visible wounds appeared across his body, with blood flowing from them. Yet the injuries continuously healed. His companions had initially been worried because Lord Wulin was blocking more than half of the 73 Ancestors' attacks, meaning Luo Feng had to withstand the pressure of approximately 30 Ancestors by himself. No other lord could endure such pressure alone. Although Luo Feng's injuries appeared more severe than Lord Wulin's, they were not worsening. Among the lords of the cultivator camp, their daos, inheritances, and combat techniques were openly shared because they were trusted companions, allowing them to cooperate more effectively. However, every lord's dao was unique. Even if two lords eventually created the same primordial path, their internal mysteries and integrated spiritual wills would still be completely different. Each lord therefore had to create the path most suitable for themselves. Because even the slightest disharmony in spirit could cause the creation of a primordial level path to fail. Jin was amazed that although life path techniques were generally vicious and difficult to master, Luo Feng's techniques were exceptionally fierce. Luo Feng explained that he did not like purely life-based techniques because they lacked sufficient killing power. Methods such as depriving vitality, infiltration, and erosion could instantly extinguish the vitality of world-level primordials with a single glance. But they were much less effective against ancestors. Therefore, truly powerful killing moves required the fusion of life and destruction. Yuan explained that the 73 ancestors and the lords had mainly been fighting through long-range techniques because neither side dared to become trapped within the other side's formation. Even Lord Wulin could be heavily restrained or temporarily imprisoned if surrounded by the enemy. Yuan therefore instructed Luo Feng to focus on long-range methods and transmitted his cooperation plan to all 7 other lords. The information stream contained detailed battle simulations showing numerous scenarios in which 8 lords cooperated against the 73 ancestors. Luo Feng immediately understood the plan and could infer many other combat situations after observing it once. Yuan stated that Luo Feng's contribution to collective combat would be enormous, increasing the overall strength of the lords by 30 to 40%. Since the ancestors were unaware of Luo Feng's breakthrough, the lords had to seize this opportunity to kill several ancestors. The lords were already filled with killing intent. As the highest-level protectors of the cultivator camp, they carried the responsibility of defending the entire camp. More than 1/6 of their territory had already fallen, and countless creatures had been destroyed. Yuan ordered Starlight Lord to take Luo Feng and depart cautiously. Once Luo Feng entered the battlefield and the ancestors discovered his presence, they would urgently send reinforcements, which were estimated to require 3 days to arrive. Because the infinite primordial space was too vast, even the innate primordial life camp's ancestors who excelled in space-time would need 3 days to reach the battlefield. Those 3 days would therefore give the lords an opportunity to expand their gains. Starlight Lord quietly took Luo Feng away from the land of origin. Luo Feng was regarded as the strongest expert in concealing his life aura throughout the entire infinite primordial space. He could completely control every strand of his life aura, making it extremely difficult for even causal methods to detect him. Luo Feng realized that with his current life level, every step could cross an endlessly vast distance, making him much faster than lake transmission. Yet his speed was still insignificant compared with Starlight Lord's. Every step Starlight Lord took crossed countless layers of spacetime, which appeared beneath their feet like a map. Luo Feng was astonished that Starlight Lord could travel by transcending spacetime itself. Starlight Lord explained that every lord had their own strengths and that he was simply skilled at traveling. This ability was also why he had been able to collect numerous high-level primordial bloodlines and world-level primordial bloodlines. Starlight Lord explained that every lord was undying and indestructible, existing as a transcendent being. However, because they protected the cultivator camp, they endured tremendous hardships. Lords were the most powerful individual existences in the infinite primordial space, and if they were selfish and ignored the survival of countless cultivators, their lives would be far easier. However, they had been nurtured by their source worlds and had received immense grace and causality during their cultivation. Therefore, no matter how powerful they became, they could never forget their roots and origins. Each breath consumed approximately 1% of his energy, but his enormous energy reserves made the consumption manageable. Luo Feng was somewhat surprised that his energy reserves were so massive, allowing him to withstand such terrifying attacks despite the power of the life and destruction fusion and the insights that had created the Star Tower blood scale. Lord Wulin, whose body was larger than Luo Feng's and comparable to a source world, suffered only light injuries because he had pursued the ultimate defense of his powerful physique. Luo Feng and Lord Wulin joined forces to shield the other lords from the storm of attacks, immediately reducing the pressure on the remaining lords. Luo Feng's appearance also completely exposed his existence to every force throughout the infinite primordial space. At the same moment, in his homeland source world, Luo Feng's avatar began breaking through and started refining the source world. The cultivator camp has gained another lord, and the 73 ancestors immediately recognize Luo Feng's extraordinary strength. His powerful physical body and ability to restore his companions to their peak make the ancestors increasingly uneasy. However, because Luo Feng had been received and broken through the laws by force less than 2 millennia ago, the opposing camp has no intelligence about him yet. The battle begins when Thousand Eyes Ancestor discovers that Mo Man Lord has infiltrated the area. Mo-Man transforms himself into primordial fluctuations, making it impossible for the ancestors to distinguish him from the surrounding fluctuations. He then unleashes a terrifying attack, transforming the vast temporal space where the 73 ancestors are located into surging waves and countless musical notes. The entire space-time becomes a battle hymn that violently stirs, tears apart, and destroys the ancestors. Origin: a perfect spherical life form and one of only 4 beings among the more than 100 ancestors of the innate primordial life camp qualified to occupy a seat in the land of eternity. Uses his powerful defensive Dao to stabilize the surrounding area. However, because Mo-Man has transformed the entire vast temporal space into a fluctuation weapon, Origin can only stabilize a limited region. The infinite snake ancestor then attempts to suppress the fluctuations by sealing space. It is the supreme leader of the infinite Great Snake Clan, one of the most respected beings in the innate primordial life camp, one of the top 3 ancestors in strength, and the absolute leading force of the war against the cultivator camp. However, its spatial suppression is countered by the Starlight Lord, the only lord on the cultivator side capable of suppressing its spatial expertise. The Golden Lord also joins the attack. He declares that the ancestors have offended the lords for too long and divides into 13 black auras, which appear at critical locations within the ancestors' formation. As Mo-Man's fluctuations shake the spacetime, the 13 auras merge with the critical nodes and explode simultaneously. The explosions trigger one another, causing their power to multiply instantaneously to terrifying levels. Because the explosions are precisely coordinated with Mo-Man's fluctuations, the 2 attacks completely overlap and sweep across every ancestor, seemingly attempting to erase them from their very essence. The ancestors resist with all their strength, but Mo-Man and the Golden Lord burn their main combat avatars and unleash desperate attacks of overwhelming power. More than a dozen ancestors with weaker defensive abilities suffer severe injuries. Although ancestors possess extremely tenacious life force and can assist one another, killing one remains extremely difficult. Before the severely injured ancestors can recover, Lord Mingwang launches her unavoidable golden lightning. She burns her main combat avatar and unleashes 12 of her strongest strikes, each targeting one of the 12 severely injured ancestors. The surrounding ancestors assist in blocking the attacks, allowing the 12 targets to survive. Luo Feng then swings the sky-splitting saber, with each slash containing 1/10,000th of his energy reserve, the maximum power he can unleash in a single strike. Hundreds of blade lights are released in an instant, guided by the elemental array and aided by the Starlight Lord's control over spacetime. The blade lights descend deep into the ancestors' formation and attack the flanks of the 12 severely injured ancestors. Most of the ancestors are able to withstand or evade the attacks, but Yun Mo ancestor is struck directly by one of Luo Feng's slashes. Already severely injured and barely holding on, Yun Mo ancestor is cleaved in 2, causing its strength to decline even further. The initial immediately tells Yun Mo to enter its body, because hiding inside would make Yun Mo impossible to harm within the infinite primordial space. However, during the war, the initial only allows severely injured ancestors to hide inside, since every ancestor that stops fighting weakens the overall battle formation. Before Yun Mo can enter the initial, an enormous hand descends from another timeline and grasps both space-time and Yun Mo's divided body. Starlight is responsible for the attack. Yun Mo then transforms into endless light and escapes the hand's confinement by transcending time and space. The light enters the body of the infinite ancestor, and Yun Mo expresses gratitude before hiding inside. The infinite ancestor is one of the top 3 powerhouses of the innate primordial life camp and one of its 9 emperors. Although it possesses the theoretical possibility of complete death and therefore cannot secure a seat in the land of eternity, it is still extremely powerful, comparable to the infinite snake ancestor. The 9 emperors are the 9 highest-ranking beings among the more than 100 ancestors, consisting of 4 undying beings and 5 exceptionally powerful beings. The infinite ancestor, the infinite snake ancestor, and the silent extinction ancestor are the top 3 among the ancestors, with only the infinite snake ancestor possessing a seat in the land of eternity. Although the infinite ancestor can potentially be completely annihilated, the 8 lords of the cultivator camp cannot kill it directly. Only 2 existences in the infinite primordial space can restrain it, and even then, restraint alone is insufficient to kill it. Killing the infinite ancestor requires cooperation from multiple sides. Because it faces the possibility of death. It is the absolute main battle faction of the innate primordial life camp and seeks to devour more source world origin in order to become stronger. The infinite ancestor orders the ancestors to remain steady, explaining that the lords are taking advantage of their unfamiliarity with the new lord's abilities to launch a counterattack. Once the ancestors understand the lord's methods, they will be able to develop ways to counter them. However, Thousand Eyes Ancestor suddenly discovers that Mo Man has infiltrated the battle again. Shocking all the ancestors, they do not know that when Mo Man, Jin, and Mingwang burned their main combat avatars, they had left behind weak avatars hidden and protected by the Starlight Lord. After their main combat avatars were burned, Luo Feng immediately restored their weak avatars to their peak state. The battle formation requires Yuan to control the formation, Starlight to control spacetime, and Wu Lan and Luo Feng to withstand the enemy's attacks while maintaining the battle array. The four of them must constantly remain at their peak condition. Lord Nai Ji Yu possesses many ancestor bloodline techniques and is highly versatile. But his desperate methods are not as powerful as those of the other three. Mo Man, Jin, and Mingwang, however, become extremely terrifying when they burn their main combat avatars without holding anything back. Mo Man returns to the battle once again, causing the ancestors to realize that the situation is becoming increasingly dangerous. Although the ancestors possess powerful strength, immense life force, and excellent coordination, and are not afraid of lords who master the essence of power. The ability of Mo Man and the others to repeatedly burn their main combat avatars and return to battle makes it difficult for the ancestors to endure the prolonged conflict. Mo Man then uses another lethal technique of the primordial fluctuation Dao, transforming into gray fluctuations that do not affect spacetime but completely penetrate the bodies of every ancestor. This technique, the soul fluctuation kill, directly attacks their life cores. The ancestors resist with their powerful origins and manage to withstand the strange fluctuations. The Golden Lord launches another attack. Destruction rifts appear across vast regions and sweep through the already heavily injured ancestors. In the end, two severely injured ancestors are devoured by the destruction rifts and die in battle, leaving the remaining ancestors shocked and enraged by the deaths of their companions. The war had previously resulted in the deaths of only 3 primordial ancestors. While the remaining ancestors continued gaining experience through battle and the Lord's side had made no significant progress for a long time. However, the situation suddenly changed when 2 more ancestors were killed. Silent Extinction Ancestor, one of the top 3 among the 9 emperors of the innate primordial life camp, recognized that Luo Feng, the newly emerged lord, was the crucial factor because he possessed the ability to rapidly restore his companions to their peak condition. He informed Infinite Snake Ancestor, Infinite Ancestor, and Initial that he would attempt to deal with Luo Feng, and if they failed to break through this key point, they would have to avoid battle. Silent Extinction Ancestor then led 6 other ancestors, including Thousand Eyes Ancestor and Star Luo Ancestor, in a joint attack against Luo Feng, while Lord Mingwang burned his main battle avatar and transformed into terrifying golden thunder to lock onto severely injured ancestors and prevent them from escaping. The 7 ancestors launched a combined attack that struck directly at Luo Feng's soul and body, bypassing the elemental array and the obstruction of the various lords' domains. Luo Feng's soul endured the attack like an immense, unshakable mountain, although the attack caused his soul to roar and attempted to drive his body toward collapse and destruction. He remained completely clear-headed. His primordial life and death Dao contained 6 systems, including the crucial mind consciousness system, making his soul exceptionally powerful among lords of the same level and overwhelmingly stronger than those of the ancestors. Even the full power joint attack of Silent Extinction Ancestor and the others failed to seriously injure him. His 1,080,000,000 origins continuously restored 1/10 of his energy every moment and rapidly expelled all foreign energy from his body. The Ancestor's special mind-based killing technique had once been extremely effective against beings of the same level. But it was far less effective against the 8 lords of the cultivator camp. The lords were immortal, and only Lord Nai Ji Yu and Golden Lord would suffer significant impairment from such an attack. The technique could not lock onto Starlight Lord or touch Yuan's soul. Wu Lan could easily withstand any attack. Luo Feng remained completely unaffected. and Mingwang and Mo Man possessed powerful minds that allowed them to resist mental damage, suffering only minor physical injuries. With Luo Feng's arrival, the overall defensive strength of the Lord's side had increased dramatically. After realizing that the joint attack had failed, Infinite Ancestor ordered the ancestors to avoid battle. He then transformed into endless light, assimilating the bodies of many ancestors before the light suddenly contracted into a single enormous sphere. All the other ancestors disappeared inside it, effectively retreating from the battlefield. The 8 lords observed the giant sphere without even wanting to attack it. Jin was extremely pleased because, after countless years of planning and only managing to kill 3 ancestors with the weakest survival abilities, he had now killed 3 ancestors in a very short time. He had also freely used his forbidden technique, burning his main battle avatar as if it were an ordinary move, and found the sensation exceptionally satisfying. Mingwang asked Starlight whether she had obtained all 3 ancestor corpses. Starlight explained that, because no one surpassed her in temporal and spatial insights, she had seized the corpse of the ancestor killed by her attack and moved it into another timeline the instant the ancestor died. Yuan was also relieved that they had concealed information about Luo Feng's breakthrough in advance, catching the ancestors off guard and achieving such a major success. The tide of the war had completely turned. Previously, the ancestor side had possessed an absolute advantage, and even Starlight's calculations could not overcome the disparity in strength as the Lord's territories were gradually lost. Now, however, the ancestors had been forced to retreat and avoid battle. Starlight explained that if Luo Feng's breakthrough had been exposed beforehand, the innate primordial life camp could have deduced a great deal of information, dispatched reinforcements, or temporarily retreated. Luo Feng then asked whether the 8 lords could deal with Initial Ancestor or move the massive sphere to a dangerous location within the infinite primordial space. Yuan and Starlight both confirmed that they had no way to deal with it and that no one in the entire infinite primordial space could do so. According to the intelligence Luo Feng had received, Initial Ancestor represented the ultimate defense of the infinite primordial space. It could not be destroyed, shaken, or moved. Although it moved slowly and attacked clumsily, it could essentially be ignored because of its extraordinary defensive ability. Wulin explained that Initial Ancestor's body was comparable to his own in robustness, but it possessed the incredible ability to perfectly disperse incoming power. Jin stated that even his full power attack would have 99% of its force transferred and neutralized, leaving only 1% to strike a body with robustness comparable to Wulin's. Luo Feng was shocked that even Jin's terrifying killing power could be neutralized to such an extent. Starlight added that Initial Ancestor appeared to be a fixed point in spacetime, completely unshakable and immovable. Wulin explained that perhaps an attack of sufficient strength could move it, but the power of the lords was reduced to possibly only 1,000th after being transferred and neutralized, making it impossible for them to move Initial Ancestor. Mingwang jokingly suggested that Luo Feng could freely slash at it because it would not fight back, while Mo Man added that even if it did fight back, its attack would not be worth mentioning. Luo Feng knew that Initial Ancestor ranked only in the lower middle range among the ancestors in terms of deterrence and was even weaker than the lords in combat ability, since every lord could rival the strongest ancestors. Curious about the strongest defensive existence in the infinite primordial space, Luo Feng decided to test it. Initial Ancestor's massive sphere was denser than a source world and had become a fixed point in spacetime. Luo Feng could sense the profound mysteries of numerous Daos within it, including the mysteries of life and matter, all perfectly united into a complete and miraculous existence. He summoned the sky-splitting Saber and launched a slash that instantly crossed the distance of spacetime with immense power. However, when the Saber struck the massive sphere, Luo Feng felt as though he had hit empty space. Even when a portion of the force was transmitted through the lifelock, only faint traces of blade light reached the sphere's surface, and even that 1,000th of the blade's power failed to leave the slightest mark. Starlight remarked that the fact Luo Feng could hit Initial Ancestor at all was already impressive. Initial Ancestor then spoke and recognized Luo Feng as the 8th Lord of the Cultivator Camp, stating that the Cultivator Camp was fortunate to produce a new lord during the genocidal war. Yuan asked Initial Ancestor whether it intended to continue fighting or end the war, declaring that the lords would accompany it if it chose to continue. 4 figures then appeared beside the massive sphere: Infinite Snake Ancestor, Infinite Ancestor, Silent Extinction Ancestor, and Inference Fire Ancestor. The core war faction among the 9 emperors of the innate primordial life camp. Infinite Snake Ancestor challenged the lords, asking whether they truly believed that the addition of one lord would allow them to win and declaring that the cultivator camp should be the food of the innate primordial life camp and had no right to resist. Jin immediately retorted that the lords were immortal and that the ancestors were actually their food. As the lords hunted ancestors and used them as cultivation resources, he pointed out that 20 ancestors had already been killed while not a single lord had been lost. Silent Extinction Ancestor calmly acknowledged that 20 ancestors had died, but stated that the threat of death had also caused the innate primordial life camp to produce 32 new ancestors. The weak had been eliminated, while those who survived had become even stronger.